Hello. Can people hear me now?
Yes, thanks for doing this.
Okay, cool. So if you was everybody here last week, or are there new people?
We're new, but that's okay. We'll catch up.
Okay. So oh, I'm not lit very well. Oh, try this light. Does that help? Oh, that helps. There we go. That's a little more light on me. Here, let's do this. Okay. Front lit. That's a little better. Okay. So side lighting. Look at that. Great shadows. Which side shadows? There they are. Great shadows. Okay. I don't look like I'm looking into my camera because I'm actually using two computers here, just so that you understand. I've got a phone that does the video and the microphone, but then I'm using my desktop to present from. It doesn't have a microphone or a camera, so I'm kind of looking at my desktop while my phone is taking video of me. Lot less people than, oh no, here's more people. Let them in. Okay, less people than last week. Last week we had a whole lot. I think the word got out pretty good last week, and this week I was kind of late, just saying, oh yeah, by the way, there's a second one. Last week we talked about course setting for beginner courses, and so today we're going to talk about designing advanced level courses, orange and up. So let me get my presentation up here and figure out how to share my screen. Let's see. There we go. Okay. So for those of you who are not new to my seminars, this is only my second week doing this, and I'm pretty new to this Zoom stuff, so sometimes there will be maybe technical issues here. Okay, so people should be able to see the screen now.
Yeah, I can see it.
Correct. Cool.
Yeah.
You're talking to me?
No.
Okay, great.
Thank you for cleaning the drain thing. The fish dryer thing.
All right, somebody's been cleaning a drain today. Okay. I need to make sure, how did I have that up last time? There's a way, oh, it's up in here, okay. Yeah, I have to have this up so that I can tell if new people want to get in. Okay. So today, course setting, advanced and expert classic courses. Specifically, I'm talking about designing classic style courses right now. So that's what most of us are used to. It's the typical, longer distance in the forest kind of orienteering. There is a handout that this is largely based on. Let me get everybody these slides. So I'm going to post link to the slides in the chat. Where'd the chat go? It's in here probably. Chat. So that you can download them yourself and then get the links that are in them. So there is the link to the slides, which then has links to other things. Okay. Go away thing. Go away. This is annoying. This is the annoying part. How do I make you go away? Oh, there it went away. Oh, it came back just when I wanted to click on something. This is not good. Okay. Go. There we go. Okay. So there's nothing in that course setting handout that isn't in here, but if you wanted, it has the information about white and yellow courses and some other stuff in it that we'll gradually be going over a number of weeks. All right, so this slide is same as last week. Just a reminder that, and this gets even to be more important when you're talking about advanced courses, that the course designer's job is not about deciding where a control should go. It's about designing what will be the navigational problem from one place to another. It's about designing the leg between control sites. So it's not so much look at a map and say, where would be a good place to put a control? It's about look at a map and say, if I'm here, what makes a good problem of where I should have to try to get to? So you always want to keep that in mind. So let's talk first about Orange. You'll notice I've called this Orange Advanced. Many clubs do not use the word advanced to describe their Orange course. LAOC does. We use the word advanced for the Orange course. The reason we do this is because to the vast majority of lay people who do not already orienteer, what we do on an Orange course would be considered advanced navigation. The Orange course is about going off trail and having to read contours in order to get where you're going. Okay, for the average person, even the average outdoors person who does a lot of hiking, the idea of having to read what is going on the map other than the trail itself is a pretty advanced skill. And by calling the Orange course advanced, we have found that we're less likely to have people with experience that isn't necessarily orienteering experience. They show up and they look at this being called advanced and they say, okay, I'll do that one then. I know something about navigation. Let me try the advanced course first. We call our courses above Orange expert. So we end up with fewer people thinking that they should just jump onto a red course if they have experience. And for each course I have a keyword. The keyword for my Orange course is safety. So the main thing to think about on Orange is you're trying to get people off trail. You're getting them into something that is an advanced navigation environment, but you want to do it in a way that keeps them safe, right? You want to assume that these people aren't experts yet. They are going to make some mistakes. You want to make sure that they have easy ways to bail. If they have a problem, you want to make sure that the way that you're taking them off trail keeps them on routes that will still collect them back onto trails and things so that they don't ever get so far out in the woods that if they're really lost, they won't be able to find their way back. Winning time on an Orange course should be 35 to 50 minutes. I want to point out too that winning times are for a 100-point orienteer according to the official rules, right? Chances are your club doesn't have one of those. So Orange course is also at the championship level for 15 and 16-year-old high school kids, right? So so that means that, you know, the person who you're setting it for to take 35 minutes would be the top 16-year-old boy in the country. Okay. Now, I have a tendency to err, especially with Orange, because it's such a big jump from yellow to orange, and also people who have some navigation experience but haven't orienteered before may choose to jump to Orange pretty quickly. So there's often a lot of people doing an Orange course, especially at a local event, who are still working on a lot of skills. So I think it's best to err on the side of making it too short rather than too long. You know, you'd rather have people coming back a little bit earlier than you want than to have them going out and everybody DNFing or taking their full 3 hours and now you don't know if they're safe or whatever. So I usually try to set my Orange, you know, with the idea that I probably want something like a 35 to 45 minute time from one of our local really fast kids. which, which might mean then that a lot of the people on the course, the people who are just walking or going slower or who are newer to it, could easily take an hour and a half to 2 hours on it. So 3 to 5 kilometers, depending on climb. That's sort of these guidelines are fairly locally minded, right? There's a lot of places in the country where nobody would even think of setting a 3K orange. It would be way too short. But here in Los Angeles, with how steep many of our areas are, there are many places where if it's going to be a really steep course, making it only 3 to 3.5K will get you about that correct winning time. Whereas if you're on a really flat area that's very fast running, you're going to want to go more toward that 5K. But remember, this says depending on climb. You don't want to set a 5K orange if it's also got a reasonable amount of climb on it. Nobody will finish it even remotely close to the winning time. So with orange, you want to make sure that people are having to use all of their skills. At the orange level, there's, people should be working on everything, following handrails, using attack points, aiming off, having catching features, all of that stuff. You want to include all of those things in your course, and the more variety you can put in, the better. But it's most important that safety is built into every leg. So you're going to have a variety of techniques. There should be some route choice, not necessarily on every leg, but at least on some legs, and decision making, places where people have to think about what they're going to do. So things you can use subtle handrails. So what do I mean by a subtle handrail? A subtle handrail, something like a reentrant is a really good orange level handrail. A major reentrant, having to go up or down that, something like that. Collecting features, so that's having to keep track of things as you pass them as you go along. Terrain recognition is by far the most important part of an orange course, is making sure that people are learning how to read those contours. They should have to read the contours to be successful on an orange course, but only in a large way, larger hills and reentrants and things like that. They shouldn't necessarily have to be able to identify every single minor little wiggle in the terrain. And compass work, it should be very important that they're keeping their map oriented, going in the proper direction, maybe taking bearings from attack points, that kind of thing. So here's a good rule of thumb when thinking about what to use for orange control points, especially terrain things. I try to think of it as that if you're going to use a terrain feature as a control point on orange, it should be the kind of thing that an expert orienteer, I should change this to say expert, that an expert orienteer would use as an attack point. So the kinds of things that those of us who are used to running expert courses feel like are too easy, like a hilltop or a large reentrant or something like that, for us, that's a place we would go to attack from into a more minor feature. For an orange level course, that's the kind of thing you want to actually use as the control point. And you want to have catching features beyond the control feature. Now I say always here, you'll see when I show some examples that many of them don't have a catching feature beyond the control feature, but they might have one just in front of it or something like that. But you want to have something reasonably close to your control feature that is a place that if they either overshoot or if they have trouble with it, they can easily bail to and know that they're close to that thing. Some things to think about on the orange course in terms of making sure that people are learning the skills they need to be able to eventually become expert orienteers. One is making sure you're using a variety of features, especially terrain features. So making sure that you're putting in those hills and saddles and reentrants. And spurs are a little more difficult sometimes to follow, but if you can get them to one to point out what a spur is, that's a nice feature as well. You want to try to force off-trail routes. It shouldn't just be about finding handrails between things and then going into the woods a little ways, a little further than you might on a yellow course. You want to try to make sure that there are at least some legs where there isn't really a good handrail route. If you tried to use a handrail, it would be way too far around and force them to do some off-trail route finding. You want to push recognition of attack points by using them as your control features now, so that they get used to how to find a hilltop, how to find those other things that they can then use as attacks later on. And requiring route choice techniques and route decision techniques, because that's something that becomes very important at the expert level, is understanding where your strengths and weaknesses are in deciding which way you're going to go around something. So you want to make sure that on the orange course you have some things that have people looking at that. So let's look at some examples. That's not, I'm going to start with Mount Pinos. Cancel this, where's brown? Orange. Okay, so here's an orange course at Mount Pinos. I've picked Pinos to show some advanced and expert courses because it's one of our best terrains up here that really gives the opportunity to set good courses. Orange can be difficult on the Pinos map. It's really good for expert courses, but sometimes it can be difficult to find ways to keep orange safe. So this is a course that I set 2018. We had one of those one-day ranking events. So I think we had 2 days at Pinos, but only one day of it was the ranking event. But I'm showing the ranking event days because I know those were had extra consulting and vetting and things. So here's the orange course. So we started here. So we've got starting with going up to a reentrant top really quick. So it's not very far. So you probably didn't have to get very far up here before maybe you saw the control. I don't remember how visible that control was or not. I don't think it was super visible. So you probably had to get pretty close to it before you saw it. You definitely could not see it from the start. You had to at least orient your map, get going in the proper direction. But it's not too hard to know what direction to go because it's the opposite of, from the road. You can see where this is. If you've got your map oriented, it's not going to be too hard. Then we've got a long leg where off-trail route finding, right? There's no good reason here to go all the way out to a trail to go around or anything. It makes sense to go straight. So it's really, telling this orange person, okay, time to get off of trails and move through the woods. But you have a big catching feature right before the control. So there's no doubt if you're going in the right direction, you're going to hit this trail. I mean, in fact, that trail goes all the way around here. There's no way to get out of this area without hitting a trail. So you're going to hit a trail. And then this is a pretty big rock feature. In fact, I think you can see the feature from the trail. So again, you're not going to have too big of a, you've got a good safe place to go to, nice collecting feature. So then 3 is a little bit trickier. This is a little bit more advanced. We added this later in. At first, I think we had a leg from 2 to 4, but wanted to make things a little bit longer. And so we added 3. And with the idea here that this marsh, especially in the terrain, is a really, really obvious feature. It's very large and it's a very different vegetation type. So we figured, well, yeah, if people are, going reasonably the right direction, they'll see that thing. And then they know they just need to find a boulder off of that. So again, that's an off-trail route. There's no other way to get there. And the marsh is basically the big catching feature that you have there. You also have a big hill beyond it. This is a pretty steep hill if you get to there and try to get up it. If orange is understanding their contours properly, this is all downhill to here, but then you can tell this is a hilltop. So if you end up starting to go up, you've gone too far. And in the meantime, if you as long as you're going down, you're going to hit this marsh. You can't get to below it without going through it. Number 4 is like number 2, going across to a trail and then having to attack from there. 4 and 5, there's a little bit of a route choice here. Are you going to take the trail or are you going to go straight? There's not a lot of reason not to take the trail. I think even an expert orienteer would probably bail out to the trail and then attack from there. But again, you have good other catching features here. You have these other big rocks behind it, this other little trail, things like that. 6 is similar to 3. There's a big marsh here to kind of help funnel you into the right area. I don't remember if the control description here was the reentrant or was the marsh. It was the reentrant. So it was a little, I think it was a little bit past the marsh in the reentrant. But as long as you're going basically the right direction, you're going to run into that. And now this is a little bit, so this is probably the least safe part of this course is the part going from 5 to 6 to 7, right? It's hard to figure out how to get people through here safely. Okay, this is pretty steep, but it's not clear if an orange level person is going to really notice the difference in steepness that much. They'll notice it in the terrain, but do they really understand it on the map? But so that's why we went to this big obvious marsh, and then from 6 to 7, hopefully if they're doing their compass work properly, they'll run into this trail here. If they don't, and if they accidentally miss that and end up out here somewhere, eventually they'll still run into a trail. But it's a much further away to get to that up that way. And that trail continues around like this, and eventually there's a roadway out here if you went totally the wrong direction. But if they're heading in reasonably the right direction, they should hit this trail. And then here's an example of using a hilltop, right? 7 to 8, going straight in there. So this is a good attack point route. This is a good using a major feature. 9, I believe, is a reentrant junction. So here you've got some route choice. You can try to go straight. You can come back out to the trail and attack from here. You might choose to run all the way around somewhere here and attack from there. That's probably not a great route, but if you were relatively beginning on orange and not so sure of yourself, maybe you try something like that. And then it's just a run into the finish. So that's an orange course. Any questions about orange?
Claire, how much do you expect people to understand distance on the map?
By the time they're at the orange level, they should have a pretty good idea of how long it's at the very least of how long it's taking them to get from one place to another. I will freely admit that as I was developing, I had a very good innate sense of distance, and I was orienteering on red courses for years before I even learned to pace count. But once or twice I made some big mistakes because I couldn't. I realized, oh man, if I really had known how to measure distance in more precision, I wouldn't have had to have made that mistake. But I was on an expert course before I got to the point where I desperately needed to do that. I mean, for orange, you've got this safety issue. So since you have these catching features and things, whether or not you know exactly how far you've gone here is not nearly as important as knowing that you're running to the trail,
Yeah, I was kind of more or less thinking of your example of 6 to 7 if they, were too far to the right.
Uh-huh.
And he says, oh, but the other trail could be way up there, and do you expect them to understand that, or to know that when they're out there? Like, gee, I should have been there by now.
Yeah. I mean, if they're paying attention, they should be. 4 to 5 is about the same distance as 5 to 6. They'll be getting used to about how long it's taking them to do that. They're going 6 to 7, they've been taking 5 to 10 minutes per control. All of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, I've been out here for 20 minutes already. I haven't hit the road. Gee, maybe I made a mistake. But you never know. I mean, you get a lot of, with the kids who are moving up, a lot of kids these days don't have a very good sense of time. I've actually read some studies about that because that people who know how to read an analog clock have a better internal sense of time than people who only know how to read digital time, apparently. It's really interesting. So, and sometimes kids they don't carry watches. They don't have the same sense of time and distance sometimes, but. But hopefully one of the things that will happen is, you know, you want Orange to teach them the skills. So we have these catching features and attack points to help you with distance issues. And all it takes is 1 or 2 mistakes with that before you start thinking, gee, if I don't already know how to pace count, I better go learn it. Sometimes it takes actually making a mistake and having a bad experience to realize that there's a skill that you don't have that you need to put into your arsenal. Okay, so expert courses. Somehow I thought I had put this below the other one, but yeah, I want to come back to this, I guess. Let's talk in general about expert courses. So the keywords for expert courses are variety and fairness. People doing expert course want things to be different. They don't want every leg to seem the same. So you want to try to look for whatever things there are in the terrain you're using to make different legs different. Don't have them all be the same length. Some longer ones, some shorter ones. And the other thing is fairness, making sure that the way that you're designing the legs and the way in and out of things is based on something that people aren't going to, you know, come back and say, well, that was totally unfair. The people who came from the south, you know, had a way easier time, and if you were from the north, it was hidden behind a bush or whatever. So you want to have a variety of leg lengths. That's important. Try to keep things a combination of both longer legs and shorter legs. The classic courses are supposed to be variety. If you get into ultra long, then it's only about having more long route choice legs, but a classic course should be a combination of things. Try as much as possible to use technical part of the map and avoid trail running. This can be difficult depending upon what map you're using, right? When we look at Pinos, that's fairly easy to do at Mount Pinos. On many of our maps that are closer into town, it can be very, very difficult. You get into areas that have a lot of chaparral, and it can be very hard to get out into technical areas at all because they're too covered with vegetation. Look for the best possible legs and design course around them. So I don't know who was the first person I heard this from, but this is how I usually start designing my expert legs. Is I'll start by looking for the very best thing I can, and then say, okay, so if I want to put this one really good long route choice leg into my course, let's do that, and then figure out what would be a good set of legs to get to the first control of that, and what would be a good set of legs from the back side. I'll show you here. If you look at my, oh wait, it's, dang it, stupid thing. Go away, go away, go away, go away. Not that. I want to make this thing go away so I can get to the stuff under it. Oh, I can move it. Oh, that works. Cool. Go down here. Okay. Want to go to, get out of that. Man, everything's being annoying today. I don't want to upgrade. We have 10 more minutes. Okay. Here, Mount Pinos. Blue. I thought I put this in here, didn't I? There we go. There it is. There it is. So you can see this blue course from Pinos has this big long leg from 7 to 8 in it. So I'm pretty sure that I started by looking at that. I looked at the map. I said, what's a really good long route choice leg I would want to give to my most expert runners? I came up with, you know, going from somewhere over here to somewhere over there. And then I designed around that. I designed a set of legs to get to that. I designed a set of legs coming back from that. And you can see some of the variety in here. I've got some smaller legs in some of the more technical areas of the map, and then some longer legs that have some route choice to them. So that was kind of how I approached that. Okay, and then we don't have Darren Robinson here. He couldn't make it. Best route choices should not be miserable. Every now and then I meet a course setter who thinks that orienteering is about making people climb hills and fight through swamps. And most orienteers really don't want to do that. So So don't make it something where the best way to get to the control is to have to do something annoying, if possible. But you can include those things as route choice problems. You know, oh, there's a big hill in between here. What's the best way around it? Should I take it or not? Is it better to go over the hill or around the hill? Okay, well, that's a question that really makes you think about what you're doing. Avoid, where did I go? Come back. Avoid poorly mapped areas. So this is something I heard somewhere along the line is, if you don't like the course, blame the mapper. If you don't like the map, blame the course setter. The idea being that if the terrain or if the map itself is not very good, then the course setter ends up very constrained. And so oftentimes you get lesser courses just because the terrain doesn't support it or because the map had a lot of bad stuff in it that the course setter was trying to avoid. But if you're running around on your course and you're running into a lot of things on the map that you think are bad, well, that's because the course sitter didn't do their job in making sure that they only set things in places where the map was accurate enough to support the course. So if you're running into things on your map that you're saying, oh, I can't really even tell where this control should go, then don't put it there, or have the mapper remap the area to make sure that it's clear. Avoid dog legs. So a dog leg is when the approach into a control is the same as the way out of the control. Some course consultants will look at things like, they'll look at number 8 and say, oh, that looks like that might be a dog leg, right? The tighter this angle is, the more likely it is that perhaps you created a dog leg, right? Where people who are coming from 7, the way that they go to number 8, I mean, you know, suppose I went on a fairly straight route, I probably will come from this reentrant down here to there, and I probably won't go back out. So this probably doesn't create a dog leg, but especially if you're going into a reentrant or something, it's very common sometimes that the way people will go into the reentrant and then come back out in the same direction. That creates a dog leg. Another thing that can create a dog leg is if you run people the opposite direction on the same leg. So if I've got blue going from 9 to 10, but then I have red going from 10 to 9, now we've got runners running the opposite direction. And so the blue people can follow the red runners into the control by seeing people running this way, and the red runners can follow blue into the control by seeing runners running that way. You want to avoid a situation. So this is a fairness issue. A dogleg becomes unfair because the person who arrives when another person is there coming out has the advantage of having seen that person coming out of the control. So if at all possible, you want to make sure that people coming into the control aren't coming in a way where they will see the people coming out. Lastly, this is a rule about descriptions and things. Oh, now it's in the way of that. Go away. The control should be clearly visible to a competitor who is at the described location. Okay, so just like you don't want your route to be physically miserable, it's also not about having to hunt for a control once you get to the right place. If you're there, right, I circle a boulder, I go to the boulder, I say it's on the east side of the boulder. If I go to the east side of the boulder, there should be no doubt that there's a control clearly visible there. I shouldn't have to look behind a bush. I shouldn't have to do anything. If in doubt, make it more visible rather than less. It's far better for things to be, for somebody to get to the right place and say, oh, there it is, that was easy, rather than to get to the right place and to say, I'm clearly in the proper reentrant, where is this thing, and wander back and forth until you suddenly realize it's just on the other side of some large tree. And if the tree's not on the map, and if the tree's not part of the description, then it's not fair for me to spend time on that control because it's on the wrong side of the tree compared with somebody else who went to the right side of the tree in the first place. Darren was going to talk about mistakes he's made, but he could not make it to the meeting. Oh, I got some people I never let in. Dang it. Hi, new people. Sorry I didn't notice you earlier. So you've missed a lot. We're almost done. That's my bad. I apologize. So we're looking at this blue course. So we looked at this a little bit. Let's look at, so that's an extreme example. So as you go down, another thing that I have a tendency to do is think about how many people you're setting for, right? At our events, we don't get huge numbers. So my red course was probably just a subset of the blue course because I didn't have to worry too much about a lot of people being on both, right? So they've taken out a little bit of the stuff out here, but otherwise it's fairly similar. It has pretty much that same long leg in it. A little less out here. And it's a very similar course in terms of where it goes. What else here? I should ask if there's any questions because we only have a few minutes left. That's white, orange, green. There's the green. So the green was quite a bit shorter. It did not have that same long leg. Green had so green had more like 4 to 5 was like the main log leg there. And then the brown was shorter still.
But you seem to have everybody going off in the same direction in the same place on 4 different courses.
Right, and this was a single day NRE, so we knew that the crowd wouldn't be that hard. One of the things that I tend to do in this is, right, I don't want to have to put out more markers than I have to. So if the crowds aren't too big, so 3, everybody went to 3 because that was a water control. The other thing I'll do is I'll fork this. So I can guarantee you they all had a different first control, right? But then maybe everybody went to the same number 2. But so brown goes straight from 2 to 3 there. Green, okay, green didn't have that number 2. They had a different number 1 and 2, and then they went to 3. Red and blue, so red had a different number 1. This might be the same number 2 as green. No, it's different. So they're going to the same general areas, but to different things. So one of the nice things about this sort of remember I talked about that you're setting legs, not controls. So basically what I've done is I've said, okay, so the first leg is going to go from here to somewhere up on this hill. The second leg is go from somewhere on this hill to somewhere down in this technical area. The third is going to go from this technical area to the water control. So I've set up different sets of that for each course, but I'm still setting up the same sort of general problem for everyone. But they can't just follow each other because once they get down here, if they're following somebody who's not on their course, they'll be at the wrong place because, well, the red control's over here and the blue control's over here. So they look very